Hello and welcome to my MediaPipe project here. This will be available on Patreon, so please check the description below. This will be a walkthrough, very basic guide on how to use this tool, what it's for, but also kind of a deep dive towards the end for those of you who might be interested on how this works behind the scenes. So let's getting started. This is a MediaPipe kind of tool to create annoying orange type of effects. So for those of you who may not be familiar with Annoying Orange, it's kind of an old cartoon. And basically it's using compositing to crop the eyes and mouth and put it on to a 3D model. Now there are some other use cases for this. So depending on what you're going to end up using it for, here in this situation, it's to create a 3D environment. So that way you can, for example, stream or use it to composite into other elements. So getting started here with the UI, it's divided basically into three different sections. There is a preview section here, which is used to orient the camera. You can click and move. You can also use WASD to kind of move around if you wish. So you can kind of move around the scene, go up and down, okay? You can rotate the character as well, kind of using the keyboard here. You have to click to be able to move around, but that's a little bit by design to avoid some issues. So that's kind of the preview window here, and it's controlled by this preview button. For some reason you want to disable it so you're not getting distracted or CPU usage, you can disable it here. Now there are some other main buttons here. This is going to be the section for basically generic controls that are for every scene will have the same controls. I'll start off here with the sliders. These are kind of going to be used for kind of setting calibration. Depending on where your camera is, for example, if it's a little bit off center, mine's a little bit up. So sometimes I need to translate the character down a little bit just to kind of get it into frame, depending on the model. We also have a couple drop downs here for different models. At the moment, I only have 3, but then in the future there will be more. But we can easily add more later. And then we also have kind of a mask, which is a little bit of a different approach, but the same kind of thing. Under the hood, we're using MediaPipe, so we can use it for different things. Now, there are two main modes here. Here we have like the full 3D scene, but then we also have another mode, which is kind of like solo mode. And this solo mode actually makes the background transparent. And this is going to be used, for example, if I bring my OBS here, we can see I have a section here, Brock, right? And I can see there's my Brock as a source. It's being sent out through a spout capture. But then I can composite into different things as I wish. So you can see here I have a magenta background just to show that he's completely independent here. And then you can put them into different scenes. So I have a live room, a newsroom where I do some news broadcasts from, and I have him composited here. So then actually, if I make that full screen, you can kind of see that he fits in there. So that's kind of one use case here where you can kind of want it to be a transparent background, and you're only basically using here for lighting, for cropping, or setting up the where the character is. Okay, so that's what this is for. There's also different scenes. For example, Studio One actually doesn't even have a background on purpose because it's already kind of with the idea that this is going to be used just for lighting and effects. So if you want to come in here, you can kind of use this one for more like a studio light, which helps kind of set your character up with the correct lighting, depending on your scene and how you're getting things set up. This is kind of like one use case. There is another button here, which is going to be the body overlay. And what that's going to do, it's going to actually go ahead and let me make this a little bit bigger. And these are resizable, so you can kind of drag these around if you need more space. Okay. And I'll get to the bottom panel here in a moment. Right now, we're just focusing on these. So the body overlay will actually add a body, crop my body back in. So it kind of adds like a broccoli head here. Now to do this, it does need some video input of some sort. Right now I'm using NDI to multiplex the camera because MediaPipe also needs to use the camera. So there, you then have to kind of either use NDI or a spout or OBS virtual camera. Somehow, if you want to use this body overlay, you have to define the video that it's coming from. Unfortunately, the MediaPipe doesn't separate. Give me the original feed. Maybe I'll look into that in the future, but this whole body overlay thing might end up turning into its own project, just because it has a little bit differences and nuance. But here's where the translates and stuff can kind of come in handy. So if you need to fine tune the position of the character, you can. And again, this is kind of like transparent background, so there is an alpha channel being sent out. So if we look here at the source that's coming through, it's completely transparent, so there's no background here. You can see some models are poke out a little bit, so depends on the model. They also have like the mask might be a little bit more appropriate for this. Again, you may have to calibrate, so kind of going towards the center of the screen, looking at my camera, and you can kind of fine tune things here and there, and kind of create what you're wanting to do. So that's the body overlay. If you do have NVIDIA graphics cards that's capable, you can turn on or off the NVIDIA background. As you can see, without it, this is like from the raw MediaPipe, and it's a little more noisy. The background removal, if you have NVIDIA, will be a little bit better. So get back that to normal. Some characters don't work so well, like Poopy Head here, since she doesn't have a proper neck or chin. You can poke out. But again, if this is interested in this, I may actually turn this into a different tool to get this a little bit better. So that's the body overlay. I wanted to kind of get that out of the way here. So this is kind of like the general modes that we can we can kind of use this tool in. So going back to the normal scene. So let's go to the bathroom where Mr. Poopy Head belongs. You turn off solo mode, and it automatically behind the scenes turns off NVIDIA if you're not using it. So don't have to worry about what state it's in as long as you have a background. It's here. So like I said before, you can kind of move around. Now each scene will have their own kind of control section here on the bottom, depending on the complexity of the scene and what the scene provides and the purpose of the scene. There'll be kind of different controls. Generally speaking, there'll be kind of some sort of global lighting. There's like you can individually tweak the individual lights here. There are some preset camera positions, so we can kind of create some different positions in the scene. There are some lighting effects. So depending on, there's 3 different levels here. You can kind of, different groups basically, just affecting different lights. And we can even kind of walk around and see that the lights are flicking around here. Yeah. And we can turn them all on or off at the same time. And it kind of creates this kind of interesting effect here. So it's kind of the purpose here is just to kind of give flexibility and capabilities into the scene. Now moving on here to like the next section, we have some bloom settings and threshold settings, and also a film grain. The film grain is kind of important if you're using the alpha or solo mode. At the moment, before it didn't trip it up, but sometimes you might find problems with the alpha, so you can turn this down if you're using like a solo mode. But generally, other than that, you shouldn't have any problems, other than be careful if you turn it up way too high. Same thing with the bloom. And then we also have some camera settings for like depth of field. We had kind of changed off the FOV a little bit. And actually, this is probably good for capturing some of this focal length. Okay, so it can change a little bit of the fall off of the camera blur here. Let me go ahead and make this a little bit bigger so it can be a little bit easier to see. Okay, so we got some control here on how the camera depth of field and focus is working. This will also kind of follow the character, meaning if we push him in or out of, oops, wrong one. If we move around in the scene, it focuses on him, on the character. So you can see it pulls focus wherever the character may be, along with some shadows. Yeah, there we go. Kind of look I wanted here. So you can kind of then play around with how the blur comes into the scene. Yeah. So that's the the bottom section here. This bottom section here is just the different controls available in that scene. Now, not all scenes will have the same level of controls. If we go to the outdoor scene, which is a more a basic scene, it's going to have different lights. It doesn't have the effects settings, and it's actually just using an HDRI and a couple of lights here, and a couple of camera positions. This is more for Broccoli, Mr. Broccoli. So that's kind of like the basic outline of how this interface works and the purpose of this is. We also do have a jitter filter. You might notice some, depending on the lighting conditions and camera, the character may jitter a little bit. If I try to stand really still, you see if I turn the jitter filter off, I'm kind of jittering around a lot. And so this helps keep the jitter down. You can turn it up if you have a lot, but it does tend to, it can smooth your motion a little bit, but you can still dance around. You can still dance around. There we go. Okay, so that's kind of like this is pretty much the end of the basic overview and guide of how to use the basic interface. And now I'm going to kind of dive a little bit deeper on how this works behind the scenes. We do still have like control here for what a video device we're using. So like I was saying before, right now I'm using NDI video cam. Another detail of the UI here, just make sure you understand that you can always hit F1 to go into a full screen mode, and like basically before mode. And then from here, you can always resize things, reshape them, put them on a different screen. It's just to kind of bring awareness for those of you who may not be aware that there is a perform mode. And then to get out of here, just hit escape and you're back into TouchDesigner. Okay, so the project is built in somewhat of a modular way, meaning that it's relatively easy to add more models and more scenes to the project. If you're just receiving a model or a project, it's as simple as just dragging and dropping the folders into your project file. For example, there's two folders here. There's going to be scenes and models, and basically, if it's a model, it's going to go into the models folder. So you see here the different models that we have. And if it's going to be something like a scene, then you can drop it into the scenes folder. And it'll automatically show up here. So even if the TouchDesigner is running, if you add a scene or a model, it'll automatically show up here in the drop down, so you're ready to use. Now behind the scenes, it breaks down the project into a bunch of different segments here. This is the main MediaPipe. This is where we're actually getting the segmentation information. And this is the reason why, if you do want to use the body overlay, you have to also feed it in the original background. Oh, hi, everybody. Because it doesn't output the original feed, unfortunately. But this is useful for cropping the masking the face later if you do use the body overlay. So there's kind of like the body overlay section down here, which is what actually will, well, since it's off at the moment, let me go ahead and split here and go up. If let's go ahead and turn on the body overlay. So get rid of that, and we can go ahead and bring him down a little bit. I think it's down and a little closer too for now. Okay, so the body overlay here is just a kind of a compositing. It takes in the image segmentation colors and kind of keys them, just kind of tries to create a key out of them. I use glasses, so glasses can be a problem. It's a different color, but it's really hard to track. So I kind of do these weird transforms to try and blur it out. So yeah, this is kind of like the rough. This is why I may turn this into a separate project, because it kind of needs its own special attention. But then we have the other section here, which is just basically compositing. All this is just removing the background and then doing an over/under on the compositing to try and smush the character between. But that needs a lot more exploration. Now, the main juice of all this is going to actually be broken down into these two sections here, these two containers. The face texture parts is just how it crops or goes and gets the eyes and the mouth from MediaPipe. MediaPipe sends out a mask of the face, kind of a blend shape, and you can delete or select the different groups. So in this case, I'm selecting the right eye. Here, I'm selecting the left eye. I'm selecting the different body parts, and then basically masking them from the original video. So then this is where, for example, I have the eye geo on top, okay, and then using a render here with a orthographic camera. Basically, wherever the eye is, that's where in the original video, right? So the eye is here. It's going to just crop it and kind of just render it out into a mask. This is to kind of try and transform it from 3D to 2D while maintaining the perspective. And then all the rest of here is to center it because it's in screen space right now. So when I move to the right, my eye is moving to the right, right? You can see it here. And when I move to the left, it moves to the left. But to be used as a texture, we kind of need it to like be stable. So basically here we're inverting the transforms that's coming from MediaPipe, because MediaPipe has all the transform matrices, and here we're inverting it so that way we can stabilize the transform and the rotation. So even if I rotate my head around, the eye is centered, right? It doesn't move. So even if I move my head around in the screen, the eye is still there. So it basically does this for all the different body parts, for the eyes, for the mouth. Right now I just have eyes and mouth, but if we wanted to add, for example, eyebrows, it would be the same thing. I would add eyebrows. And these are kind of generic. I can copy paste one of them and then just create a mask for the eyebrows. They're independent because, well, body parts are different sizes, so you can kind of optimize the space there. So yeah, this is the kind of the the face texture parts where we're actually kind of cropping from the MediaPipe geometry into stable texture. Oops, I went too far. So here, this basically gets passed on to the render scene, and this is where the kind of like the rest of the magic happens. It takes in the transforms and those textures, like the eyes and mouth. Right now, it's just eye and mouth. It takes them and puts it into a model slot. So this is kind of like a generic component. That's actually what these are that I was showing earlier. There you are. So whenever you get a new model or a new scene, that's what these are. The things in model slots are going to be models. So Brock, Mask, and Poopy Head, that's what they are here. And it's basically, if you want to create a new one, essentially you can copy paste one, go into it, edit it, and then you can save component talks. And when it saves it, you're now saving basically a new version. Just make sure you rename it so it doesn't overwrite your old one. But this is for creating a model. For example, this is the way the broccoli is made. Yeah, let me go ahead and do that. So the broccoli here, it's just, this one is just a generic OBJ file, so it's nothing special. I also have a simple texture here with a PBR material to kind of create the geometry. So this is basically just importing the broccoli into the scene. So this is the raw broccoli, I guess you could say. And then there's also the transform information coming from MediaPipe that's being piped in, and this is to help to give the root here some transformations. Now there's a lot of indirection here because to make things modular, but right now I'm just kind of giving overview of how like the individual components work. So for example here, this is how I'm getting the mouth onto the model. I'm actually creating a grid and then transforming it, basically just to help position it wherever I want to kind of get it there. And then using ray cast here, I'm casting rays to basically glue that grid onto the model. So if I move this around, you'll see that my mouth is moving around, right? So this you can kind of tune your character. If I wanted to create a character like this, actually, I kind of like that. Anyway, so this is where I'm assigning the model, the mouth texture to this grid that's been projected using ray casts. Okay, I'm projecting rays to glue that grid with that texture, and it outputs it here. And then using parenting, just parenting, so that way things move and get stuck together. Same thing for the eyes. We're going to move them just a little bit. I do like it. I think it's funny. There we go. Same thing for the eyes. Just a grid, and then just in a different position. Then depending on if I want to make the eyes bigger for comedy or whatever, you can definitely do that here. So this is kind of like where you can tweak where the eyes go, where the different body parts are relative to the model, because each model is going to be different, right? This one's a broccoli. And then we basically have some parenting here. There is the root. This is used because there's going to be some cross information between like the scene and the model, specifically like the camera. So right now, the model doesn't need to worry too much about that. The only thing of note here is the focus target down below. This is used for focus pull. So basically just choose a part on the geometry that you always want in focus, depending on how big the model is, right? Like for example, the nose or the eye. So that way the camera can focus on that when it's doing a depth of field. All right, so moving on here to the next section. This is going to be the renderer itself. I'm not going to worry about too much about that. Let's move on here to possibly the more complex part, which is the scene slot. So the scene slot is going to be where we create the actual scene. Now, this doesn't really matter too much like how you do it. For example, the broccoli, I use an object file, but you could have used an FBX or whatever. It doesn't really matter. All that matters is that as long as you kind of maintain the same pattern, right? Actually, let me go back here. So the important thing here is maintaining the same pattern where we have a model parent, we're using pulling the same rotation from the world offset, and there's a translation here. So this is kind of like the important thing that has to be kind of met, right? There's some bindings here. So probably not a good idea to start completely from scratch. I usually copy paste and then start and make a new one to maintain the bindings here. So that's why there's some cross information. You'll see here scene root. This is where the root of the scene for relative to the camera and the model. For example, here's the camera pivot. So when this moves, the camera and the character moves. The scene slot is responsible for defining a couple things. It's responsible for defining a focus target, right? Well, not defining, but it accepts a local. The scene slot is responsible for defining look data and the scene camera. So the look data is going to have to do with the camera motion here that we're receiving from here. To be able to do this kind of FPS motion, there's some transformers. We're about to get into it. So the scene slot only has to worry about making UI elements and everything else. So here we got a camera. I got a component called FPS cam. This is used to create this kind of first person kind of thing. Look here, control. I got my scene lights, the environment, the textures I'm using. It's just a simple sphere to create that background, nothing special. And here are the UI elements. The names are important because it's how kind of the things are binded together. But everything else out of that, you can kind of go ham. This one's still using this light effects component, but this one is actually copy pasted. I didn't really even use these. The bathroom scene, for example, if I load that up, since it's a little bit more complete. Here we go. And if we go into here, we'll see that's different setup, right? But it still has the same kind of thing. We got some lights, we got the scene control, we got the first person camera, just another light. And then this one here is an actual USD file. So yeah, it doesn't really matter how you set things up. It's really just important that you set it up in this kind of layout with the scene control and a light manager of some sort. So this was the one that's responsible for doing the lighting effects. It's just oscillating a couple light intensities. That's why we have those contracts on that on here to turn these things on and off. Okay, for the UI. But the actual camera motion here is handled by this FPS cam component. We have some preset camera positions. So this is where the camera positions are set for the presets. So camera 1, 2, and 3, that's where it's getting, for example, not only the camera position, but the focal length, fall off, the settings here. So every time you switch over, you can kind of tune a look, and then it'll always kind of default to that. Okay. So that's what these are for. And then the FPS cam here, this is where I always love seeing math and nodes. It's always great. Not to be scared, but this is basically just the math for handling the rotation here in the camera. So it's taking the yaw input, the pitch input from the screen space, because the screen space is going to be like 0 to 1, I think it was. So it needs some math here to be able to do it. But anyway, this is some trigonometry basically to kind of get the where we need to go when you hit W, right? We want to go forward. So this is kind of basic game programming in a way. Very complex for people who don't know, but very simple for people who write games. So this outputs here like a look data transform. This is so we can always kind of reset back to where we were and keep things relative. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the scene. I mean, pretty much it is kind of giving it a quick explanation because the scene is a little bit more complex. It has a lot of lights, a lot of UI elements kind of controlling here, but yeah, nothing too crazy, the camera is just bound to the different things like the FOV, and now, for example, the near and far settings are kind of important for the depth of field effects. Yeah, we do have a couple things here, right? Depth of field and then the post effects. The depth of field actually uses here a depth buffer, uses a depth buffer from the render. And then basically we use a ramp to kind of fine tune where the depth is. So that way when we use LumaBlur, we can kind of control. So that's what these settings basically are controlling here. So if we look here on the kind of like the input for the LumaBlur, we can kind of see what's going on with the focus. So this is kind of what the focus is actually doing behind the scenes here. Okay. So if I move around, we go back to here where we have a little bit more things to see. Maybe, go up a little bit higher. So this is kind of where you can kind of set the different depth of field. So what all it's doing behind the scenes here is controlling essentially the levels, this levels of the ramp, and kind of where the fall off is, right? So everything that's white will become blurred, and everything that's not white will stay unblurred. And then that's what goes in here to the LumaBlur. I do have a little bit of oscillation in the white value. This is just to kind of help create a little bit of camera breathe, kind of simulate a human, kind of slightly adjusting the focus constantly, micro adjustment. But yeah, it's very subtle, but you can kind of control everything else here through the rest of the controls. So that's kind of the depth of field effect. It's actually pretty simple. There's actually a whole different ways we can play with this. I try to keep it somewhat simple and realistic, but of course there's a whole world of fun in there. Yeah, so that's it for pretty much the depth of field effects, and then the post effects is not too crazy either. Just a basic bloom. This is where we're getting the bloom filter controls are from. And then we can kind of add a little bit of a tone mapper. And then this is for the film grain. I do have some grain in here. It's just a basic noise Can't really tell there, but if we turn it up here, we definitely do start noticing, especially in the output. Yeah, let me go ahead and show it here. See, we can start seeing some green in the image there. Obviously, it's very, very very strong right there, but it does invert the levels of the image. When it does that, it just takes the lumens, so we get a black and white image, and then it inverts it. The idea being that we only want to apply grain to the dark areas, to the shaded areas, to kind of simulate, film grain, where it's more pronounced in the darker areas. And that's pretty much it. So let me go once over from the top, make sure we covered everything, but I think that's pretty much everything. Like I was saying here, it doesn't really matter how you import or what you're using, FBX, USD, object files. The important thing is just kind of maintaining the contract and links between things. And then other than that, you can kind of go crazy. As an example, we can look at the mask, because the mask actually uses a whole different way. If we look at the mask here, actually it's pretty messy. I need to clean this up. It doesn't even use the eyes right now, or the mouth texture. It's just using the actual raw blend shapes. I'm being a little naughty, but that's okay. It's a global variable. It's coming in from the MediaPipe. So we got the blend shapes directly available here in our model slot. So in this model slot, you can kind of go crazy. This is actually from the example that MediaPipe gives. So shout out to them. But yeah, you can just basically come in here, render out your geometry as long as you maintain this hierarchy. See, here's the focus target. We're going to have a root up here at the top with the model parent, because that's where the the transform information is coming from. Yeah, and then that's it. Basically, it's just creating different textures that applies to it. This one is different because it does use like the mouth. Look, I have eyebrows, for example, and that's probably going to be the next version of this plugin, or this of this project, is going to be creating more blend shapes, so you can kind of blend actual, like, your cheeks when they move. You notice if I scrunch my nose around, it moves around. So instead of just having raw cutouts, we can actually morph the geometry as well. But that's not on this version. That'll probably be the next iteration. So definitely keep an eye out on my Patreon for that and other updates. And feel free to leave comments and any suggestions for different scenes, for different models, for different features that you might find interesting. So yeah, I hope you guys found that interesting. And thanks for watching. Bye.